This is, before it was headlines, it was prophecy. And I'm Katie Elizabeth. Last week I had some technical difficulties with this video, this particular subject matter, so I'm going to redo it and see if we don't have some better video quality here today. Hopefully I've resolved it. You know, it's one of those things, and I think we can all understand this, whether it's world events or our own personal growth, or by the time you get everything that you thought you were doing wrong out of the way, the path directly to a good solution seems a bit difficult. So anyway, I want to get on with the point of this particular broadcast. There's been a couple of things in the news recently that I think really we need to get a hold of and we need to remember. One is the woman, Miriam Ibrahim, in Sudan. In watching that, you know, in America, we like to just get all divided over our religion and our politics, and then no matter what the subject matter is, that's the side we choose. So I was doing some research, and according to Islamic law, everything I could find, it doesn't matter what the individual practices religiously or not. If someone's father is Muslim in an interfaith relationship or marriage, if someone's father is Muslim, the children are. So I'll throw that out for our own American debate right now. And I'm not sure this video is going to be any better quality, but the information has to get out here. So I'm going to proceed. The other thing we need to, I wanted to be sure to cover, is the fact that, you know, after the Babylonian captivity, 10 of the tribes did not go back to Israel. And that's something, now I'm not saying there are people who will never know a God that are just going to land in paradise. But there are, of the three Abrahamic religions, there is no reason to even question that 10 of the tribes are intermingled in Islam and Christianity, or the rest of the known world as we know it. So we are going to start seeing, converts. We will. But they're going to be a remnant. And by that same token, there is no reason to even underestimate the number of people in the three big religions, including Judaism, that have already sold their soul for the love of money. You know, we know that there is a lot of money tied up with the Vatican. We know there's a lot of money tied up with Saudi oil. And by that same token, there are also elitists of Jewish descent as well. You know, I know that Chabad was very, very influential in the Reagan White House and Bush 41. So there is money invested in the three Abrahamic religions, as well as there is the lost tribe of Israel, 10 tribes wandering throughout the entire world. So we need to keep that in mind as we all tend to polarize. I will say I was in Israel in 2004, and what Hamas has done to Gaza is just reprehensible. And I'm going to get into that in just a minute. I want to talk about the relative size of what the entire world is weighing in with an argument, and the size of what is really the real estate that's going on in this. You know, as I mentioned, in 2005, Gaza was literally, Ariel Sharon handed them flourishing greenhouses, olive groves, pomegranate orchards, and stopped settlements in the West Bank. handed him the keys and says it's all yours. And in no time at all, it became desolate wasteland again. And now we find, tunnels. Tunnels of all things. There's no occupation, and there hasn't been. The so-called Palestinians were actually citizens of Israel and have been since 1948. They insisted upon their own leadership and split over that too. Remember, Gaza and the West Bank are being run by two different guys. And Israel is virtually surrounded. Israel continues to hold the deed to the Judean desert. And what I found and attempted to point out in this week's video can be shared by a simple link. And I'm going to post that in this week's Goshen Gazette. I'll post the basic transcript of this particular video. Now, although the exact population has changed since 2010, the uproar amounts to basically a portion of New Jersey's population saying, we want a new state, all of our own, but we went out of New Jersey, and as a matter of fact, we went Trenton in the deal too. Because what the whole world is weighing in on, Israel, is the size of the state of New Jersey. And I'm going to bring this close to home, since we're all taking it personally, how the Middle East is getting handled. I'm going to bring this closer to home. So we have the Palestinians saying, we want you to fix it all up, get the infrastructure in good shape, and then hand it to us. Oh yeah, and we want the capital too. But we're not going to take care of what you give us, and then we're going to grind. Because that is what's happened. Now, take it a step further in comparing the size of the Arab nations to this tiny, tiny little sliver in the Middle East we all call Israel. And, I have two questions through this. I just can't help but wonder, of course, we know truthfully that this is about the annihilation of Israel. We know that. But another question comes up is, in all of this Arab land, what is it about the Palestinians that none of their so-called Arab brothers want them? There must be something pretty significant, because as I continue this, explaining the size, the proportion of the land we're talking about, it just makes me scratch my head and say, wait a minute, what's with this? Other than, of course, the annihilation of Israel. Egypt is about the size of, as far as land mass, obviously everything is not shaped precisely the same, but bear with me on the square mileage here. Egypt is about the size of Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas combined. So, there's that. All the while, remember, Israel is New Jersey. The size of New Jersey. So you could fit that into Arkansas alone, I don't know how many times, but you put those three states together. Then we have Iran. It's the size of Alaska. Now, so far, we've got two countries over there, just two, that are larger than the two largest states in the U.S. Then we have Iraq, which is about the same square feet as California. So those are the large states in our nation. And remember, Israel, New Jersey. Keep this in mind. Now, Jordan is about the size of Indiana. It's small, comparatively. And Syria is about the size of North Dakota. So also relatively small in the contrast of all of this. Turkey is about the size of Texas. They're just about the same size. So you've got, that's two countries right there that are the size of our largest state in the contiguous 48. But let's move on to Saudi Arabia. It is the size of the southern portion of our entire country. From west of the Texas Panhandle all the way up the East Coast to about the Carolinas. It is that large, just up and over, like a quarter of this country is the size Saudi Arabia is. So when you start thinking about all of this land mass, they have a couple million Palestinians who are cranky with their neighbors. And you've got Israel the size of New Jersey in all of this. And they're being made to be the bad guy. They're being made to be the problem and the bully and the fall guy. When this started over rocket, first of all, 3 teenagers kidnapped and killed, and then rocket fire from Gaza on Israel. I am not saying that Israel doesn't have its own bunch of corruption in its government. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that doesn't make them the bad guys as the victims to respond. We need to always keep in mind the passports at 9/11, 15 of them were from Saudi Arabia. That's not the country we went after. We do know for a fact the rockets were coming from Gaza. So as this continues to unfold and we all weigh in with an opinion, there are 10 tribes of Israel that didn't return after Babylonian captivity. And the creator of heaven and earth is going to draw them back in. And we just don't know where all those tribes are. But we do know, whether it's biblical Israel or democratic Israel, they have a right to exist. And they handed Gaza some beautiful, beautiful land. And they stopped the settlements in 2005. I'm sorry the Palestinians couldn't pick that free gift up and make something of it. This has been, before it was headlines, it was prophecy. I'm Katie Elizabeth.